All right. Welcome in, everybody. I'll be getting started here in just a second, making sure that the live stream is going on all of my platforms here. All righty. Okay, fantastic. I think I'm up and running now. So, good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. This is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology. I'm doing a live stream this morning to promote my annual Kickstarter campaign and to say thank you to everyone for supporting the channel, giving a little bit back in the way of a Q&A, on an open discussion about anything you want to talk about in astrology. Any questions you have for me as a content creator, as someone that you listen to regularly, I'm happy to take your questions for a little while, and then I will shift gears and do some birth chart readings. So I'm excited. Let me just get my camera focused. There we go. So on that note, let's hear where you are all coming from. And I will give you instructions later on how to submit for a birth chart. But where in the world are you arriving from right now as you're tuning in? Let's see here. Greetings from Asheville, North. Dee Dee, hey, from Asheville. It's wicked cold here. Yeah, it's cold here in Minnesota too. San Francisco, Austin, Texas, from Amara, Morgan from Austin. No, wait. Here we go. BB from South Florida. They're going so quickly, I can't even catch them. Indianapolis. I'm loving these live streams. Good. I love doing them. They're fun. Let's go to Melbourne and Sicily. We got Cocoa, Florida. Love it. Damien from Turkey. Lily from Cape Town. Amazing. Kirian from Wyoming. From Jutland, Denmark. That's amazing. And what else? Dubai. Diane from Connecticut. Deep Journeys from Denver. Germany. Misha from Florida. Love it. Portugal. Absolutely. From Vermont. So cool. I love hearing where everybody comes from. It's always one of my favorite things because it's as a content creator, like you see screen names, but you don't always have an idea of where people are at in the world. And it turns out that you're all over the place. It's just so cool. Lebanon, for example. And Redondo Beach from Sweden. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. From Sweden. My God, that's so cool. And there's Whitney from Minneapolis. Love seeing my friend Whitney collaborates with me and Alexandra on the monthly overviews, the three of us. Sarah from Tacoma, from Fresno. Amazing. I like doing this also because it allows other people to arrive at the beginning of the live stream before we get into things. So, good morning from Virginia. It's like a snowy owl. I love it. Okay, so as we are tuning in, I want to tell you about the format that we're going to follow for today. We are going to start with a Q&A session where any questions that you have for me, you want to know about me as a content creator that you follow, or about astrology. What are your questions that you have about astrology? Don't submit something saying, please read this part of my birth chart. What does it mean? I need to see the whole chart. I need to spend time with a person. So if you have general questions about astrology, about houses, signs, planets, aspects, anything, I'm happy to answer, but I would ask not for personal natal chart interpretations. I'll be doing a few readings. I'll probably do 2 or 3 later. So stay tuned for that, and I'll give you instructions after the Q&A on how you can join me in the studio for a reading. I'll give some instructions on how to do that. In the meantime, let's hear from all of you. What are your questions? What questions do you have about astrology or for me? And let's go through it. Here's a good question from, I think it's Zakia. Hope I'm saying your name correctly. Question: is it possible to have more than one sign ruling the first house? Say, like if your ascendant is in the late degrees of the sign. So no. Well, I mean, it obviously depends on what school of astrology you study or follow. In Hellenistic astrology, the ancient traditional form that I teach and work with, whatever degree is rising establishes your first whole sign house. So when we're working with whole sign house system, whether you're the first degree or the 29th degree, that sign is considered your rising sign. And so the planet that rules that sign will be the host of your ascendant or the ruler of your ascendant. Now, you could have a sign that has both a domicile and exaltation ruler, in which case you could look at both for delineating things that have to do with the first house. But there will not be two signs considered in a whole sign house approach. Now, if you're using a modern, like Placidus quadrant based house system, you may have two signs overlapping in the first house because of how quadrant based houses work. I'm not saying there's one that's right and what's wrong, one that's wrong. There's always a multiplicity of approaches in astrology, including different zodiacs, different house systems. But within the original conceptual rationale of ancient astrology, everything works through a whole sign house basis. So in the way that I practice, I would say no, even if you're a 29 degree rising. I mean, obviously you want to, check your birth time, make sure that that's accurate, because it's possible sometimes you might want to rectify the chart, push it into the next sign if it was a few minutes later. If I see a rounded number in a reading, I might go, okay, wait, let's look at this. But yeah, even if it's the 29th degree, it would be that sign. Let's see. Okay, so great question there. Really appreciate that. Maddie asks, what would you look for in a birth chart to see if a person's career could involve the written arts, like a writer or singer-songwriter? Well, Venus-Mercury contacts are some of the most reliable in my experience when it comes to people who have any kind of artistic craftsmanship with words or an instrument or singing, something lyrical. Venus, Mercury in the same sign. Venus and Mercury cooperating somehow. Now, that contact is not super. It's not uncommon to see because of how closely those two planets travel to the sun. Another one would be the fifth house, the third house, those houses in particular, a strong Venus placement, a strong Mercury placement in a Venus ruled sign, things like that. I often see the contact with Mercury and something Venusian or Venus and something mercurial in the charts of people who are just particularly gifted with words, speech, lyricism, things like that. One possibility, anyhow. There's, it's always interesting to see the different ways in which a person who has artistic ability, like how that ability shows up in the charts. It's so different from chart to chart. Hold on just a second. Hilda, there you go. You're snoring. You're snoring so loud. My puppy is snoring in the corner so loud that I was like, I needed to interrupt her. I couldn't hear myself think. All right. So anyway, that's a good question. Let's continue on. Oh, good. Okay, here we go. Question: what are some more common signs of mental illness in birth charts? Are there any common signs? First of all, I have to step out of our modern mental health paradigm, the clinical, rational, Western, modern version of what we mean by mental health or mental illness and so forth. Sometimes I have to step out of it because we forget that most spiritual traditions around the planet for thousands of years have told us that suffering, mentally, emotionally, existentially, is a basic feature of life, right? So there's something about the modern way in which we sometimes conceptualize, deal with, prescribe, diagnose, that is acting or sort of, it's as though we think that suffering can be eliminated, should be eliminated, or it's like we can't just grasp the fact that suffering is a basic part of life. It was so much more fundamental. We have so many things that are built into our lives to protect us from adversity, to protect us from the elements, to protect us from the worst in ourselves and each other or whatever. So there's a lot of protection that's been continually developed to make our lives more comfortable, and I think that's a good thing, right? I'm not against any of that. You know, for thousands of years around the world, well, a lifespan might have been 40 years. You don't have antibiotics, you're going to be dead pretty quick. And a lot of, I mean, think of how many times I would have died this lifetime if I wouldn't have had antibiotics. So what I'm trying to say is that when we start looking at a chart with the idea that a chart will show mental illness, we have to be really careful, because mental illness is a basic feature of human life. We struggle with fear and anxiety because life is tentative and we're mortal and we're going to die someday. And a lot of us have a really hard time with that in cultural or societal environments that are trying the best they can to give us every opportunity to stay asleep to that basic reality. You're comfortable, you're fine, you're not going to die. Just don't think about that stuff. And so, sometimes you're going to look at a chart and you're going to see, oh yeah, Mercury is debilitated, or Mercury's got a hard aspect with Saturn, or the moon's got a hard aspect with Neptune, or there's certain signatures that, sure, they show up somewhat reliably in relation to people who may have more struggles than others with mental, emotional health, stability, social adaptivity, whatever. But what I want to say in defense of such charts is that sometimes what we're calling mental health or mental illness or something like that is really just existential. It's spiritual. It's not a label. It's a basic reality of being alive, being a soul who's in a mortal body. So I'm very careful about that, right? I don't tend to look at charts and say, here's a sign of mental illness, because I just don't look at mental illness as, I see it as a condition of life, right? That most of us will struggle with to one extent or degree or another, and so at certain periods in our life more than others. So that's the first thing. But then I would look for Mercury and Moon context, 6th house, 12th house, problems or afflictions with Saturn, debilities by sign, 8th house sometimes. 8, 6, and 12 tend to be the difficult houses. Debilities of Mercury, debilities of the moon, relationships with Saturn or Mars. Sometimes relationships with outer planets like Neptune or Pluto or Uranus. Mercury, Uranus tends to work together a little bit better, but Mercury, Pluto, Mercury, Neptune, Moon, Pluto, those combinations can be difficult. But again, I want to say that doesn't necessarily mean that someone will be should be given a label, right? So hope that makes sense. What are your thoughts, feelings on Vedic astrology? I love it. It's great. It's just a sort of different lens coming through a different history and culture and people and religions. And so it has a lot in common with ancient Hellenistic astrology, and is also, different in certain ways. And I see them as both valid divinatory systems. Totally. A lot to learn about our system by studying. I mean, if you want to learn a lot about houses, look at the way that Indian astrologers talk about the houses in their ancient texts compared to the ancient Hellenistic texts, and you can learn a lot. It's really cool. How do you look at your children's chart in a way to guide your parenting without freaking out? Seldomly. Because it's hard to not freak out. So I don't look at their charts. I didn't look at either of my daughter's charts until they were a year old. I absolutely did not cast a chart. I knew their birth data. And there were some things I couldn't help but know because I'm an astrologer and I just knew what was going on in the sky at the time of their birth. But I didn't look at their charts or spend one moment looking at their charts until they were both a year old. I really wanted their psychic reality to be my first impression, not a chart. So, and that's important for me as an astrologer, just knowing my own tendencies, right? So I recommend parents take a little while. You don't need to look at your kid's chart right when they're born. Just get to know them. They're a soul, not a chart, right? That's kind of basic, but we forget. So yeah, from that point forward, it just becomes a matter of occasionally tracking transits. If something is popping up and I'm needing some guidance or help as a parent, it's outside of my instinct, my intuition, my process with Ashley, then, then I'll look at the chart. I don't go and look at the chart just to look at a chart, because why am I looking at this soul's chart, right? Unless I have a real reason for being there, and I'm very careful around what those reasons are, I won't go and look. We should all adopt that attitude with astrology. See, we have this way of looking at astrology that is way too open, in a sense. Like, you're just flipping open charts and looking and talking and gabbing and yapping. And it's like, no, in ancient astrology, this was an oracular tradition. You might have to travel several days to get to the site of an oracle, and you would purify yourself. You would focus on a question. You wouldn't just flip open a chart 24 times a day, right? So I think more intentionality, more distance, more reflectiveness is really important for us when it comes to looking at our own charts. I am someone who pays a lot more attention to the astrology of today, tomorrow, this week than I do my birth chart. I might look at my birth chart. I'm not kidding. I'll look at my birth chart less than 10 times a year. I don't spend a lot of time with it anymore because I don't go unless I have a question. That's really how I was taught. When you're learning and studying, now I'm 15 years into my work, so when you're learning and studying in the beginning, it's totally normal to look at your chart pretty regularly for the sake of learning. But then you get to a point where you got to be careful that you don't overdo it. That's my humble opinion. 40 years ago, an astrologer wouldn't give me the results because it was so bad. Well, let me ask you this question, Mary, because that's a really terrible thing to have had happen with an astrologer. I'm sorry you went through that experience. Would you describe the last 40 years as so awful that it can't be uttered? Because here you are. You're still interested in astrology. Which can't have all been bad, right? So what an unimaginative astrologer. I'm sorry you ran into that. And you ran into someone who didn't have the capacity to read signs and symbols in a multidimensional way and find ways that can be encouraging even when there are some challenges, if we see them. That's what our job is. What a failure. And not only that, but what a scary and negligent thing to do to someone. It's hard for me to even fathom that people do stuff like that. Yeah. How does a person know if they're supposed to learn astrology for personal development only, or if they're meant to become a professional in it and pursue it as a career? Honestly, there is no way to know that other than studying astrology. The first thing is to honor and acknowledge the calling. Like, if you have a calling in your heart and soul, it's like, I love this. This language speaks to me. I'm passionate about it. I'm curious. I love it. I can't get enough of it. That's a calling. That's a calling, at the very least, that is quite clear that astrology is probably meant to be a part of your spiritual growth, your personal growth. It's a tool for you to develop. And on that level, there's no difference in the path of learning between yourself and a professional. The only difference is that some people know maybe right away they want to do this for other people. Sometimes people walk down that path with that confidence and certainty, only to find out that they're not that great at it, or it's not going to work out. So, just because some people feel like they know from the beginning doesn't always lead to becoming an astrologer. Some people know right away and they go down that path and they're successful with it. Many people that come through my programs just are training because this is a tool for you. There is no better gift to give yourself than the ability to be your own astrologer. To be your own astrologer, you're always going to want teachers and guideposts and like lanterns sort of lighting the way. There's still astrologers I look to. Richard Tarnas, a great example of someone who really inspires me, and others. But we have to have those people in our lives, but we also want the capacity to be able to know enough about astrology to do our own hermeneutic work. For many people, that will always and only be a personal thing. But as you're going, if it's meant to become a professional thing, you'll know, because people will start coming to you and they'll start asking you. It'll just start naturally happening. It's not something you pre-decide in your head. For most of us, it's something that just starts happening. And you can't know if it's going to happen by doing anything other than just honoring and acknowledging the calling in your heart to love and study astrology. And then the rest opens up typically as we go. What is the best book to read to study astrology? Don't read books. Study with astrologers. That's my honest to God opinion. Find astrologers you love, hear their voice, hear the vocal transmission, because sound carries dharma, right? So when you are listening to a teacher who is carrying something that's authentic about whatever they're teaching, it could be how to weave a basket, or how to paint or something. You'll know because in the way they teach, it connects in your heart and in your head. It inspires, it leads, it lights the way. Each of us may have different teachers in that respect. Once you find some of those people in your life, follow them. And if they have books, if they have talks, if they have lectures, if they have programs, take those programs. Don't think about books, right? Even Firmicus Maternus, an ancient Roman astrologer, in the introduction to his book said, "May the transmission of this astrological knowledge be imparted to you through your consciousness and through the purification of your mind, far more so than what follows in these textbooks." There it is, right? So I would say, don't think about books. Think about finding teachers, finding people you resonate with. Books will open from there that will speak. Most people, that's going to be a better path anyway. In again, just my opinion. How do you interpret a yod? Someone asks me this every single live stream that I do. And I always have to say the same thing. I don't interpret yods because they're not a part of my practice. They're not a part of ancient astrology. Doesn't mean they're not real. It's just not a part of what I know or practice. What have you discovered about yourself this year? Man, that's a good question. Wow. I have discovered that I'm really good at pouring myself into things that require consistent effort and practice, like making content every day, practicing an instrument, or, when I was in monastic phase, 3 hours of japa a day. I'm serious. Like, I can pour myself into things with regularity and consistency. Like, it's just a natural thing that I've always been able to do. But what I've found this past year is that I can cut back on some of the intensity of how I apply myself to those habits and practices and get better results. And for a long time, I've been good at the practice and good at the consistency, but modulating the intensity I bring, the focus I bring to those spaces so that it can be a little bit more relaxed, and that I can trust that that is actually more productive in terms of building, developing, growing things has been a real discovery, that less is more with respect to the intensity I bring to my practices. That feels like a very Uranus on my ascendant kind of year, and kind of insight. That's a good question. That was really fun getting the chance to think about something like that on the spot is really, like, that's really cool. I'll probably be thinking about that the rest of the day and wondering if that's how I really feel. So, yeah. BB, hello. Could you elaborate a little on which technique is your go-to for predictive work when you do a reading for a client? Yeah. I use horary. So if like, natal astrology is really helpful for topics, themes, and timelines. So, for example, I was very sure that a family member would be experiencing a health crisis or difficulty in October. Okay, so that's topic, that's theme, that's timeline. I was right, because my sister had some health problems in October. Thankfully, she's doing better now. But I couldn't have told you that it was specifically my sister and that it would be specifically what she dealt with. Now, if someone came to me and asked for something more specifically predictive, like, will I move to Sweden? I would use horary because the more specific the predictive question is, the better horary as a technique works in my experience, or at least in my toolkit. That's the tool that I use for that kind of predictive question. Otherwise, my natal work is mostly going to be about themes, topics, and timelines that are archetypally consistent. Like I know that my clients are going to experience an event, a series of events, internal events around the themes and topics that I predict along the timelines I predict. I'm very confident about that. I'm really good at that. Like that's like what I'm good at with natal astrology, right? But that can manifest. It can manifest in so many different ways. I might look at, transit of Saturn to the 10th house, and I'll be like, okay, look, for this period of time as Saturn is transiting your midheaven, here are 4 or 5 different things that are most likely to manifest around this timeline. It will definitely be one of those 5, right? But I don't know which one, and it's really hard to know which one. But I don't find that my clients are generally disappointed by that. Like that's usually consistent and predictive enough. And it also, in my opinion, leaves room for whatever free will and mysterious interaction between destiny free will exists on the chessboard of life. That kind of multivalence around topics, themes, and timelines seems to allow space for people to also feel like they have some agency in the unfolding. And I think that's important. But yeah, anything super specific and predictive, I go to horary for. Good questions. Good question from Karma. Question: what quick placements do you look at for synastry? I mean, in a very basic way, I think sun, moon, rising compatibility is important. Just seeing like, is there some compatibility between sun, moon, and ascendant? Elementally, like there's different ways that can be established, but I think that's pretty basic. Beyond that, I gave a talk this fall in my speaker series on the myth of astrological compatibility, what we all get wrong about astrological compatibility. And it's really about being able to see subtler ways in which charts are connected that are not as overt or obvious or sort of basic as synastry. Don't get me wrong, synastry is important. It's not like nothing. But let's just say, for example, that in chart A, let's say it's a man's chart, he has a moon Pluto conjunction, and I don't know where. Well, let's say it's in Sagittarius. So you've got moon Pluto in Sagittarius, and then you have person B, who doesn't look to be compatible through some of the traditional synastry techniques, and it's a woman, let's say, and she has a Jupiter-Pluto opposition in her chart. Well, what they have in common is that, let's say, moon Pluto in Sagittarius is in a fiery Jupiter-ruled sign. So you're going to get someone who has that very like emotional, charismatic, deep, intense Jupiterian kind of feel. Well, someone born with Pluto in the first house opposite Jupiter is going to have the same kind of expression in their life, and constellating across the 1st and 7th nicely describes the partner with the moon Pluto conjunction in Sagittarius. So the point there being that we need to be more imaginative and creative with the way that we see patterns connecting people, because synastry can be very basic and limited. It can limit our imagination when we think that synastry is the be all end all. We have to look at what's being shared in common. Like, for example, someone has a ton of placements in Cancer in one chart, and in the next chart, you see a prominent exalted moon in the 4th house in Taurus. Okay, well, the lunar topic these two people have in common, even though in one chart you're seeing it all maybe constellating in a different sign, and then in the other chart you're seeing an angular exalted moon. There's different ways, in other words, of seeing consistent archetypal themes that could be connective tissue for people outside of just basic synastry. That becomes a really important part of how we develop an eye for real synastry, not just technical synastry. Hope that helps. It's just, a very brief way of talking about a big topic. Does your wife actually work with medical astrology ever? Would that be an area you'd consider collaborating in? I'd love to learn from you guys together. We've talked about that. Mostly the way that we have worked together, though, on that topic has been in terms of pairing planets and plants, planets and signs, planets and signs, planets and houses with plants in ways that are intuitive. Like we used to do planet and plant readings together. We'd sit down with a client, I'd read their chart, and with whatever they were struggling with, Ashley would find a way of pairing plants with the pieces of the chart and the signs and houses and planets that were difficult, because she knows plant signatures in relation to the planets, for example, through someone like Nicholas Culpeper. So we've always had a way of gelling our arts together that have been more intuitive and less formal or systematic. That's probably also due to the fact that I have no real interest in studying medical astrology myself. But it's still been a very functional way. And you'll find that kind of intuitive and creative collaboration in our Roots and Spheres monthly moon circle that we run, which is on sale through the Kickstarter. All right. Have you ever had any experience that made you 100% sure of the tropical zodiac's validity and not sidereal? So maybe you've heard me say this before, but I don't think of zodiacs as valid, right? Zodiacs are not valid any more than like a particular, like the key of A minor is more or less valid than the key of C or something like that. They both exist. So the question of their existence is not something that I can or cannot validate, or that can or cannot be validated, because their existence they're just facts, right? We have a sidereal version of the zodiac. We have a tropical version of the zodiac. They both existed for thousands of years. They both work. I've had wonderful readings of my chart from Indian astrologers in sidereal. I've had Indian astrologers read my chart in tropical. Some Indian astrologers read tropical. And I've obviously been working with tropical zodiac myself for a long time. I think that people who spend their time fighting about which zodiac is valid are completely and utterly wasting their times. And no matter how many times I say that, of course, people are still going to do it. So it's nothing I try to control or whatever, but just let's get over the idea that systems of divination are objective in some absolute sense. Their objectivity is always rooted in a relative orientation, because the material universe is relative, right? So the material universe works in and through relativity. And so the relative and the absolute stand in relation to one another. And as such, we should understand that there are different relative orientations of an absolute divine language. So an absolute divine language is the communication of the divine that comes through astrology, and it can be relatively oriented in different ways. Once we understand that, we can stop fighting and trying to figure out which one is valid or not, right? They're just different systems. Play with them, experiment with them, learn from them, and then we have some insight as to what they are, not which one is which. Or which one is better, I should say. Michelle asks, 2025 astrology, what do you think is the most important thing to be aware of? Yeah, so well, I think it's got to be the fact that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all of the slow-moving so-called outer planets, are all changing signs in the year ahead. Right, you've got Jupiter moving into Cancer, its exaltation in June, staying there till June of the following year, 26. You've got Saturn moving into Aries from late May through early September. Neptune moving into Aries from late March through late October. You have Uranus moving into Gemini, and from July 7th to like November 7th. And Pluto, of course, having just moved into Aquarius at the very end of this year, now ingressed into Pluto just recently to start the year, and there for keeps. So I don't know how often we see all of those planets shifting signs in one year, but it feels like a mid-decade shift of era. Like, some decades are like that historically, where it's like the first part of the decade was really different from the second part. And I do feel like we're moving into a different, some different narrative arcs, personally, collectively, that are really going to open strongly in the year ahead. We're all going to be feeling those ingresses. So That's what I would say. That's what I would say there. Yeah, it's a good question. Now, let's see here. Just got into hypertrophy training around April. Seeing your transformation over the years was a big inspiration to get started. Do you factor transits into building a plan to get a boost from fate? No. No, don't do that. My advice for everyone is don't try to control fate. Just listen, like the Tao tells us, right? This is something that is all over the I Ching. And ancient astrologers say as much in the philosophical portions of their text. Of course, there's always going to be things we can do to remediate or work with, and I'm fine with all of those. But what I would say is, like, if you feel within you rising up the inclination to do something, I'm going to start playing an instrument, I'm going to start weight training, then just follow that inner prompting, because that is the prompting of both choice and destiny simultaneously. Right? So remember, in ancient astrology, like, fate and free will are two sides of the same coin. So in the I Ching, it says, like, all over the place through the kind of Confucian commentary on the hexagrams, that when there's an inner prompting, that's how you know that you're following the Tao. You get that sense of, like, now is the time. Then now is the time. Don't overthink it. Just go do it. Right? Right? Don't try to control it or manipulate it or manage it. Just don't, because something about that is going to interfere with the actual channeling of the impulse itself. I mean, if you're setting up a business, the most important thing is, if you feel like it's the time to set up a business, set up the business. Don't try to calculate too much, because there's just a natural way that things unfold if we follow that way. Astrology is really about helping us attune ourselves to that instinct more than it is trying to control things. Once we try to control things, then it's like Mickey Mouse in, Fantasia, Sorcerer's Apprentice. Like, everything's going to go nuts. There's going to be brooms attacking us. So just be careful with that. That's my advice there. If you feel the inspiration to train, then, go train, and the path will just keep opening. Same thing with astrology. Same thing with anything that I've learned in my life. When the path opens, it's a door opening, probably because you've knocked somewhere, and that inner knocking, even if it's just thoughts and ideas and inspirations, then all of a sudden a door opens, then we go through it. Just, again, my 2 cents. Let's see here. So many questions. Holy cow. Oh, okay. Gosh, I am just, like, geez, there are so many here. Okay, hold on. Chelsea says, so you don't believe in using astrocartography or elections astrology to complement your business or relationship? No, I don't. I'll tell you that I have nothing against people who do. Like, it's not a judgment. It's not like, oh, that's bad, you shouldn't do that. I just don't think you have to, or that you need to. And I much prefer to be working internally with a felt sense of being in flows of time. Listening and feeling that inner sense of direction, for me, is much more important. And I have found, and this is just for me personally, by the way, astrocartography to me has many very beautiful and interesting uses outside of trying to use it to control, like, where you go to get something, or, like, put yourself here and you'll get this. Like, I just think it's interesting to look at astrocartography in terms of, like, where you've been in life and what kinds of influence lines are running through places that have been important. Like, I love it for that reason. So don't get me wrong. And elections can be interesting too. It's not like I've never used them, but generally speaking, I feel like there's sometimes we overcompensate for a lack of inner development with respect to how we walk through life by relying on things like elections. And what I'm trying to reflect on here, without sounding like an asshole, is that as someone who watches the astrological world all the time, right? I see people on social media, hundreds and hundreds of interactions every week. And what I frequently see is people who don't sit down, who don't listen, who don't meditate, who don't take care of their bodies, who don't have an inner attunement that all these mystical traditions, including ancient astrologers, tell us we're supposed to be cultivating, then overly relying on all of these techniques and strategies to manage things that are so easy to manage if we know how to listen. Even just knowing, would you want to do this tonight? And going like, how do I feel? How does my body feel? What feels right? What feels aligned? A lot of us don't even know how to do that. And then we rely on all of this stuff to make decisions for us that I think is often weakening the inner muscle of discernment and wisdom that we're supposed to be cultivating. So if people are cultivating that and using electional astrology or astrocartography at the same time, then great. I have noticed that for me, that doesn't work. It's just not a tool that I rely on or have a relationship with for those reasons. I would much rather sit down in a difficult moment where I'm looking for some guidance and talk to the I Ching. Maybe cast a horary chart and reflect upon it, as opposed to trying to elect something or manipulate something around me to get a certain result. I would rather understand the choices in front of me through a process of internality, right? So, but that's me. That's, do your own thing. How did you decide which school of astrology to follow? Well, I began with not even knowing there were different schools of astrology, In the beginning, it was just like whatever books I could find at Barnes and Noble, because a lot of stuff wasn't even so online yet. And gradually you start reading, there's Liz Green again. There's Liz Green again. Oh, this is something called psychological astrology. So what happened was just becoming aware gradually of the fact that there are different forms and schools of astrology, the different eras of astrology. There's different historical trends. There's different major practitioners that practice in different ways. There's different house systems. So as the process of education went on, I started to realize that there are the different schools. And then what I would say I began with was I was inundated with evolutionary astrology without really knowing that evolutionary astrology was just one of many schools. So then I started studying, there was a lot of psychological, archetypal astrology that I started studying. People like Liz Green, the Center for Psychological Astrology series of lectures. And then I started studying horary through someone that I met. And then that opened up to traditional astrology, initially medieval, and then made my way into the Project Hindsight era. Chris, Demetra, all of the people who were just starting to really come on the scene with Hellenistic. Turned out that I was living not far from Robert Schmidt, who was one of the translators at Project Hindsight. Started visiting with him and studying with him a little bit. So then Hellenistic, there's about a period of about a year and a half where I started sort of completely immersing myself in Hellenistic. And then that led to shifting the curriculum in all of my programs and how I practiced and so forth. So, and what did I like about it? I mean, I like understanding why, right? So someone says this house means this planet means this aspect means this. And I would always go, I betcha that there's an explanation for that that's more interesting that's even more interesting than this. Like, okay, the third house is siblings in your environment. I bet you what's more interesting is the rationale behind why the third house is associated with those things. And I would rather know that than know something about the third house being related to siblings. The only place that I have ever found that has been able to address the ancient philosophical, metaphysical, hermetic mandala is Hellenistic. What I mean by that is that giving you the deep, thorough, interesting reasons why everything is the way that it is. What is the actual difference between a sign and a house? Why were the planets assigned to the various zodiac signs that they were assigned to? What's the difference between a domicile and an exaltation? Why did these categories exist in the first place? All of these things that when I started studying Hellenistic and I was starting to learn the why behind everything, I was like, oh, this is very empowering. This is clarifying everything, giving me more direct intuitive access to the craft language and greatly and dramatically simplifying things while also creating 10 times more depth than I thought was there. That was what really compelled me about Hellenistic. So there we go. Have you ever read or heard Stephen Forrest's Evolutionary Astrology? I feel you two are deeply spiritual and love to see a sit down with you. Yeah. So, yeah, Stephen's work was some of the first work that I ever like really got into. I found him very compelling, especially as a storyteller. He's a great storyteller. I practiced evolutionary for a while. I've had several readings with Stephen, loved them. They were really great readings initially, like the first couple of years of my practice. My wife and I had one done together. So, and then I started developing a bit of a relationship with him. I'll never forget when I was teaching at Norwalk. This was maybe 2015 or 16. I was teaching at Norwalk, and he pulls up into the front row of my talk on the meaning. I think it was the meaning of the sixth house from the Hellenistic standpoint. And I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, Stephen Forrest is in the front row of my class. Excuse me while I puke, because he's a hero. Like he's an astrological elder. So, yeah. And since then I've had, the opportunity at many conferences to say hello to him, to talk with him, had some private exchanges with him that have been very encouraging. I think he's very encouraging of young astrologers in general. So, really appreciate him. I think he's a great astrologer. Yeah. So, let's see here. I'm going to take some time now and promote the Kickstarter. I want to tell you about it, how you can donate, what you can pick up when you donate, and then we're going to shift gears and I'm going to do a little bit of chart reading because I think it's time to look at some charts together. And hopefully, I like to do chart readings in a way that will hopefully be educational for people who are studying as well. So I always keep that in mind. Let's see. All right, so let's get over to the Kickstarter. So you can find the link to the Kickstarter campaign in the comment section of this post in the replay, if you're listening to the replay, the description of the video, or the live stream comments. I'm going to put the link in right here. You should be able to take it from there. If not, you can go to nightlightastrology.com. Let me put this in. Go to nightlightastrology.com and click on the 2025 Kickstarter link. As of today, we are at 304 backers. Let's just see here. We need 1,937. It's our yearly goal, minus 304. We need 1,633 more backers by New Year's Eve. That is a lot of backers that we still need. Now, let me tell you, on this exact day, December 6th, last year, we ended the day at about 360 backers. This puts us about 56 backers shy of last year's pace. So we are behind last year's pace significantly, like 2 days behind, basically. And so we really need to pick up the pace. And so I'm kind of banging the drum today, being like, come on, everybody, let's go. $5, $10, $15, any dollar amount whatsoever is really helpful for the health and future of the channel and all of the free content that I create year round. It does a lot of things when you support the Kickstarter. This acts as a major sale for all of our programs. So when you support the Kickstarter, you can get our classes, all of the classes that we offer in ancient Hellenistic astrology. You'll see on the Kickstarter page, when you scroll down, you'll see that we have a bunch of rewards. And at the very bottom, you will see our class bundles. You can attend 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of our year-long programs. We have 4 years worth of curriculum. And by the 3rd and 4th bundles, when you bundle 3 or 4 classes, you end up saving almost 75% off the cost of each individual course, which is a really good deal. We only offer this sale once a year. When you support the channel, you are also supporting, through this kind of fire sale that we do on our programs, the need-based tuition that we offer through all of our programs. So from a business model standpoint, what we're trying to do is, create programs that don't turn anybody away. So if you want to come, you can. But in order to make up for having a financial bottom line for our business goals, in order to be able to do that, we also rely on the Kickstarter campaign to help us. It helps a lot because we have a staff of, I think it's 11 people on our staff now that help us with all of the programs. We have several people who are devoted daily to the distribution of this content, to the editing and social media side of it, to pruning out, sometimes racist comments from the comment section, unfortunately. But we have people who curate the experience that you're having every day, and this is their job. And the Kickstarter supports their job as much as it also supports our need-based model, and as much as it also supports me and my ability to take care of my family. So this is how I earn my living. And your generosity, your contribution means a whole lot to us. Thank you, Whitney, for that comment. Really love that. Now, let's see. So when you go over to nightlightastrology.com and you click on the 2025 Kickstarter link, or again, comments or description of the video, you'll be taken over there, and here are the different rewards you can choose. You really need to pick up the pace today. And again, any and every donation helps. The $25 level, we have a calendar that we designed that allows you to track the transits that I am following on the YouTube channel throughout the year. So this is kind of a fun way to chart and know, this is what Adam's going to be looking at this week. Then we have the Astrology of 2025 video. Someone asked me earlier, what do you think of 2025? Well, if you pick up this video, you're going to get an in-depth lecture that I only released through the Kickstarter, unpacking all of the major astrological events of 2025. So that's a great, little gift that we give. I'm in the process of writing a book on divination and what it means to develop a relationship with an oracle. And it's a collection of stories. I think you'll really like it. It's called The Oracle Speaks. It won't be out in print form for probably another year or two, but you can get the audiobook version and the text version of the first draft of the book as it's being released chapter by chapter. There's 7 chapters that have been released so far. So in this new year, if you didn't sign up for this last year, you could sign up for it now and get the first part of the book that's been released and the chapter by chapter releases of the book in the upcoming months. Then we have year ahead horoscope readings at $100. If you donate here, you get all 12 whole sign house sun and rising horoscopes for the year ahead. So this is a breakdown of all of the major transits for your sun or rising sign. I don't do year ahead horoscope videos on my channel. You'll be getting January's overview horoscopes, February, but not the whole year at once. Each of these videos is between 30 and 45 minutes long. And when you purchase this, you get all 12 of those videos. So it's about 8 to 9 hours worth of content in the whole package. And you could listen for a few signs if you wanted. You could listen to your sun, moon, and rising. Maybe your partner or spouse or something. You could listen to theirs and listen to your own. So we just decided this year, rather than giving you only your sun or rising sign, that we'll give you the whole package. So that's a really good deal. Then we have masterclasses. If you want to look at some of the specialized topics I teach in my yearly masterclass series, you can look at the individual classes. They're all 8 to 10 hours worth of content each. One on the fixed stars, one on the transits of the outer planets, one on the lunar nodes in ancient astrology, one on the archetypes of the astrologer. This is about signatures of astrology and the different kinds of astrology and astrologers that we see both in natal charts and in the professional field. This was a really fun talk. That's again about 8 to 10 hours worth of content in each of those. The Astrology for Complete Beginners course is about 10 hours worth of content for people who are absolutely brand new to astrology. So if you want to give that to a friend or a family member who's trying to understand what the heck you're up to, this is good for people who know zero about astrology. Now, ask 3 horary questions. You get 3 horary questions to ask via email to me anytime throughout 2025. Those are really nice. Saves you off the cost of my horary readings individually. So that's a good deal. Then you can get the bundles of masterclass talks. So there's about 40 hours worth of content. The 2023 Archived Masterclass bundle includes Mysteries of the Moon Cycle, Cycles of Venus and Mercury, Zodiacal Releasing, and calculating temperament and personality in the birth chart from the traditional perspective. So that 2023 Archived Masterclass bundle is on sale. And then the 2024 Archived Masterclass bundle, which includes all of the one-off talks I just went through above. We have our moon circle that begins in January. We meet under new and full moons. You can get a really good savings on joining that program and following us on plant diets for each moon cycle of the year in community. That's a really fun group that we lead. You can check that out on the website too if you want to learn more about it. Just look under the Roots and Spheres program under the courses page. The 2025 Masterclass series is my upcoming Masterclass topics. Winter, spring, summer, and fall series, all about 8 hours worth of content each. And we are looking at the triadic houses. So in the winter, we're going to look at the 1st, 9th, and 5th houses and how they are connected through triplicity rulerships. We'll be looking at the 10th, 2nd, and 6th houses, the work houses, the 7th, 11th, and 3rd houses, the so-called social houses. And the fall, we'll look at the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses. And we're really trying to explore the way in which ancient astrologers grouped those houses together through philosophical topics that were shared in common, and how we can delineate those houses in our birth chart as a group rather than individually. That's going to be a really fun class for people who want a little advanced work on the houses. So that masterclass series starts in January. You can follow along remotely or participate live. And that one's on sale through the Kickstarter. My wife, if many of you know Ashley or follow her channel, she's offering both her 1st and 2nd year online herbal apprenticeship courses. She has a master's degree in clinical herbal medicine and has been training herbalists for, I don't know, about 15 years now. So her programs are also fantastic. If you like herbal medicine, check those out, check her channel out. And then we have the biggest savings of all, which is definitely the course bundles. So our early bird rates always go in effect a couple months before the program. And the rate for those courses at the early bird rate is still not anything compared to how good this rate is. So you got $400 off even the early bird sale that we run on all of our courses if you pick the attend one course package, which you can start with year 1, or if you're in year 1 and you want to take year 2, you could pick that up. Any of our classes can be used with this one class pass. Then you can bundle 2 courses at $1,500. This becomes an even more significant savings. You go down to about $600 off the early bird rate. You go to a 3-class bundle at $1,700, just $200 more, and now you're getting to almost 75% off, which you get to the 4-class bundle, which you can use to take any 4 of our programs, at which point each program is $500, and that's like almost 75% off our normal program cost, and like $700 cheaper than the early bird rate. So easily our best sale of the year. We only run this during the Kickstarter. We would sometimes do like pop-up sales for people who missed the Kickstarters in previous years. We're not doing that anymore because it became too big of a hassle. So this will be the only time we run these sales. And you can use these sales on any programs you want, any year you want, starting in 2025 or beyond. They don't expire, and you're free to use them on any of our programs whatsoever. So that's definitely our best deal for people who are looking for something really special and want to join us for study. Now, let me close all of this. So I do these live streams as a way of trying to drum up support and enthusiasm for the Kickstarter campaign, to say thank you for giving back to this channel and everything that we try to do at Nightlight. So thank you very much. And also, if you need it again, here is the link. I'm going to post it in the comment section. I am a Nightlight student, can say with all sincerity, the school is amazing. Thank you. I love that you shout out the staff too. We really appreciate that. So I hope that you'll come study with us. If you haven't pitched, if you watch this channel regularly, here's what I would say. If you watch this channel somewhat regularly, once a week, a couple times a month, or if you watch it very regularly, consider giving $5. Consider giving $10. If you're on a budget, totally understand. If you can't do it, just send us some prayers, some good vibes that will meet our goals. We need to meet. We have a Kickstarter is all or nothing funding, so we set a minimum to make sure that we don't lose. So that we make sure that we don't lose everything if we don't get to exactly where we need to go. So we're close to meeting our minimum, but our target is based on a number of backers, not a number of dollars, because there's a good range that we can fall in that we know will be successful when it comes to how many backers and how many dollars we need for all of our budgeting, our staff, our programs, everything. So what we need to do is land as close as we can to last year's number. And I like to think that if we grow the support every year, that's a good sign. So I just try to do one backer better than the previous year. It's always the standard list. Let's see if we can just do a little bit better. So if we get there, we're pretty sure that will be a good spot for us. So anyway, on that note, again, thank you for letting me plug the Kickstarter, and let's get into some readings now. Let's see here. And thank you for this. I'm in the current first year and love it. I joined the Kickstarter for several courses next year. 2025 is going to be Astro and Herb Lit. I love that. That's awesome. Very cool. All right. Now, if you would like to come on for a reading, here's what you need to do. You need to send your time, date, and location of birth to this email address, which is grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. You send us your time, date, location of birth to grabbed@nightlightastrology.com along with your name, and make sure if there's a specific topic that you want to look at, let me know. Once I have this from you, I'll bring in a couple of people, and we'll make sure that we do a couple readings here to close out our live stream for the day. Jan says, I just finished the first year and just donated to Kickstarter, signed up for second year. Would love to come on for a reading. Send in your info. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Okay, let me, now I'm going to send you, if you send in your info, I am going to send you in return a link to join me in the studio. Okay, make sure, some people are giving me their date and location, but not their time. I need the time, date, and location. So just remember that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, okie dokie. I'll be sending you guys the link in just a second to join. And I just do it randomly. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just totally random. Let's see here. Okay. And please don't bombard. I see some people sending like 13 of the exact same emails to me. I'm definitely not choosing you if you do that. That's annoying. No offense. It's just like, come on. Okay, let's see here. All righty. See if I can find a dude. I have to try to get like one gentleman. Okay. And now. Okay. Okay, I've sent like 4 out, so we'll just see if I get some people in here or not. Oh, look, someone's getting themselves blocked. Yeah. It's so easy. It's like, if you act up in the comment section, I will just block you. You will not be able to come back. Okay, there we go. All right, let's see what we got here. Andrew. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Did you try to get on last week?
I did. Yeah, but I had an appointment, so I had to leave.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, there's a guy," and then I just didn't get to you. I'm sorry about that. So I saw you again, and I was like, "Nope, this time I'm gonna get you."
Thanks.
Oh,
Thanks.
all right. Yeah, no problem. What is your date of birth? Can you read that back to me again?
Yeah, it's May 10th, 1981.
Okay, and the time
What did I say here? It's 8:11 p.m.
and the location.
It's Oshawa, Ontario.
Oshawa.
Oshawa.
Oh, Oshawa. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Oshawa.
Okay, yeah. All right, let's see. So I have you, and let's just kind of confirm that I've got this right. I have you as Scorpio rising. Does that sound right?
I think that's right. I mean, I'm not really that knowledgeable in terms of astrology, but I think that's right.
Well, no big deal. Okay, we'll roll with it, assuming that we've got your chart correct. So let's see here.
Yeah, I mean, those details are correct. So yeah.
Okay, so now what could we look at that would be most useful for you?
So I guess like career wise, the last couple months I've been trying to find a new job, and I guess in the last week and a half ago I got one, and I'm starting in January. Um, so yeah, I guess just career has been on my mind lately. I don't know if there's a specific question. I guess it's more just like I'm curious, like, you know, I'm not sure how this job is going to go. I have a few like questions about it. I'm a little uncertainty. And then I guess I'm just like, yeah, that's career has been on my mind basically. Yeah.
Okay, so and you're just starting this new job. Say that again.
Yeah. So I start January.
Okay, you start in January. And may I ask what you do for a living or what kind of job it is?
It's so I'm a product designer, so I design like apps, websites, like digital products.
Okay, so it's like I could call it in the tech industry. That would be fair.
Yes, tech
Oh,
industry.
okay, great. Now I'm just going to put up a bi-wheel so that I can show you some transits. And okay, so new job, new company in tech, starting in the new year. Is that right?
That's right.
And what is it about? I mean, tell me the background of why you changed jobs, or why, like, did you leave a previous job to start this one, or you just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the last 2.5 years, I was working with some former colleagues on like a startup, and we didn't really manage to make it into a business that was sustainable. So we're all kind of we all started looking for new jobs. So yeah, it's kind of just like transitioning from that into starting a new role at a new company, which is strange because for the past maybe 10 years or even longer, maybe for the past maybe 15 years, I've never had to do like a job interview. So I've just kind of rode a wave of like getting jobs through recommendations sort of thing.
Sure.
So it's just been a big change for me, like doing interviews, and it just feels like a big shift. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When did you get the job?
The exact date? I
Or
think it
just
was
like, was it this month or was it last month or?
this month. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Fair enough. So one thing that I would point out here is that as we are approaching the starting of this new job, you have a Mars retrograde in your 10th house. That's the career house, one at least of a few places we look for career. And this retrograding Mars is coming over the north node of the moon. I've circled them there. Can you see that?
yeah.
Right. Um, that's an interesting symbol happening right around the beginning of a new endeavor in career. So if we roll this forward, let's say you start, I don't know, what do you have a specific day in January that you start?
Yeah, the 8th.
8th. Okay, here we go. So yeah, so right as you're approaching that point, there's a Mars retrograde in the 10th over that north node. I mean, it is possible that there could be some modification of the role or the way in which you're entering the job, that something shifts or changes about it. I wouldn't imagine that the job suddenly vanishes or anything dramatic like that. But could there be some unexpected development? Yeah, it's possible. But more than
Mm,
that, what I'm really looking at here is the fact that a Mars retrograde around the North Node probably means that the job will either open some unexpected doors, other doors, or it will lead to something else that you're not necessarily anticipating, or that the job itself will be different than what you anticipate. And that's pretty common when you're starting something off and you have a retrograde planet going over the North Node. It's like, this is your future, but it's not quite what you think it's going to be. There's going to be some twist of circumstance or plot, which is what retrogrades often indicate. So that's something to consider in the short term. But what I really want to look at for you is the long term, because um, the more that we progress your chart along the timeline of some of the big outer planetary transits, the more interesting things get. For you, you have a Mercury in its own domicile. So it's a strong evening star Mercury that was there when you were born. And it was just making its phasis, which means its phase was changing so that you were right at the cusp of its appearance as an evening star in its own domicile. So it's a strong Mercury. Now, in the 8th house, that Mercury might find itself at times working for other people's agendas more than perhaps you would like, or more than, maybe your own creative agenda. It's very common for like a strong Mercury in the 8th house to have skills and abilities, knowledge, aptitude, craftsmanship that other people really value, but other people may also own or direct somehow. So when I look at what's happening in your chart coming up here, I wonder if there's going to be a little bit more freedom or flexibility in the roles or in the way in which you deliver your skills. I say that because Uranus, who is the god of innovation, revolution, originality, and freedom, is going to conjoin that Mercury by about August of 2026.
mm,
Now, as it does so, you're going to be having Jupiter in Leo coming over that same North Node point that we were just talking about in the 10th house of career. Not only that, but you will be at a phase in your life in which eclipses are starting to occur in your 10th house. Let me show you. So if I go just a few days forward, you'll see that there is then right here, this is a solar eclipse that's taking place right on top of your moon in the career house. That solar eclipse is going to be a potent omen for change and kind of like a new chapter that will likely commence in your career around this time. And what do we see? At the same time, we see Mercury, the planet most likely associated with your skills in tech and their value to other people, going through a radical change. The kind of change that usually brings greater innovation, greater flexibility, greater freedom, greater autonomy. Those are Uranus signatures coming over your Mercury, while there's also this signature of you perhaps coming into a little bit more authority or power or greater reputation or responsibility or notoriety or success in your career. We have Jupiter in your career house, great year for career when Jupiter's there. We have a solar eclipse over your moon in the career house. We have Uranus hitting Mercury. So if I had to project forward, I would say that whatever you're doing now, I doubt it's going to be the same as what you're doing from this point forward. This would be later 2026. And I would guess that around this time comes more satisfaction with what you're doing, more originality, more freedom, more flexibility, and a greater sense of feeling appreciated or respected for who you are, which is important for Leo moons to feel in general, to feel honored, to feel like you have your own, a little bit more of your own realm of authority and say over how things go or how things happen. You have a chart that is heavily oriented toward being someone who is pleasing, lovable, easy for other people. 3 planets in Taurus in the 7th house, especially Venus and the Sun there, speak to someone who other people will say, I feel easy to be around you. You make things comfortable, easy, natural, solid, like a harmonious person. You got 3 planets in Libra in the 12th house. You're a Scorpio rising with Uranus in the first. The hardest thing may be to be someone who has their own direction, who has to work with their own power, especially when it's not exactly what other people want or it represents your own unique creative direction. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. The people pleasing diplomatic part of yourself may at times undermine you. So I see this as a very positive point in time where you really might find people to work with or for where you just feel like there's more of you in what you're making or creating, or there's more originality and there's less feeling stuck or trapped in certain boxes.
Mhm.
So this is, to me, this would be the most exciting transit on the horizon of your the career horizon. And that's, again, like summer of 26 is when I would see things really starting to pop for you.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I hope this was useful. Just kind of doing some quick reads, but I'm hoping that this will give you something worthwhile to take with you. And it can also just help to know that, like, whatever I'm in at the moment, there's a larger time horizon that I can look forward to and know that, like, things have, there's an interesting arc that's going to develop.
Yeah, that is useful because I do sometimes get stuck in like what's happening today, this week, this month.
Oh, totally. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
And I that, it's such a helpful thing to have astrology for that reason.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. Holding down some dude energy. I appreciate that. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. And sorry we couldn't get you on last week, but I'm glad we did able to get you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
All right, take it easy, Andrew. Bye. All right. By the way, all of you, I sent out like 5 or 6 links to all of you people who sent me your information, and then you did not follow the link and come in. So shame on all of you. You send me an email and then you don't watch for your email for me to send you the link. No, I'm just giving you guys crap. All right, Sherry. Hey, Sherry.
Hi,
How's it going?
pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to see you here. I like your hair. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I just did it last night.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. See my room. I like the purple. Okay, well, let's get your what's your date of birth
July 10th, 1982,
and the time
12:51 p.m.,
and the place.
Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay, Greenville, South Carolina. All right. Libra rising. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Let me get your chart up. So, what do you want to talk about? What's on your mind?
I don't really have a particular question. It's more of like what's going on in my life. Uh, I'll just quickly say that I was have been married and divorced twice before 40. I have been single for about 4 years. I'm going through a lot of changes with that. Also, I made a huge career change, left corporate, and started my own business as a makeup artist. Right now, I am having some issues with staying focused. I've recently learned that I have an undiagnosed and unmedicated ADHD. And I
Mhm.
guess I just kind of want some direction on how to um, I don't know, navigate some of these changes in my life. Maybe if you see anything about a relationship developing sometime, I am now actively dating.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah. So we're gonna go for it. Let's talk about love.
Okay.
That'll be fun. Yeah, I love talking about relationships. Let me put up a buy wheel here so that I can show you some transits that might be useful. All right. Okay. So let's talk about the month of March through May coming up for you, because it's going to be really big. And I don't say that lightly. Like it really is going to be a big month for you, I suspect. Now, the reason that I'm looking at this, oops, where am I? I got to go back to March. Okay, here we go. So let's start by looking at, this is about March 1st and 2nd. Can you see that right there? That's Venus.
Yes.
So this is your 7th house, one of the places to look for love and relationships, right? And we have Venus stationing to turn retrograde. So first of all, a Venus retrograde in Aries in the 7th house, hovering real close to the degree of the descendant, which is that critical degree of the Western horizon that we look at in the 7th house, put it in there. This is bringing a transformation of Venus with respect to the topic of love and relationships. So you can think about Venus when she turns retrograde as diving from her position as the evening star into the underworld and then re-emerging again in the morning light as the morning star. So it's like a costume or wardrobe change for Venus. And symbolically, that represents a kind of transformational process that will take place in the sign and house that Venus is located in. So here, 7th house of love and relationships, Venus turning retrograde right around March 1st and 2nd, going through a process of death and of rebirth. Now, if you're dating anyone around this time and things get turbulent, that's pretty common, right? Because if you're in a relationship that's not solid, it's not on solid ground, or there's uncertainty, or there's drama, this is a great transit to get you clear and be like, yeah, this isn't the one for me, On the other hand, if you're in a relationship and that relationship is ready to take the next step and transform, the relationship may be ready to go through a metamorphosis. And sometimes Venus retrogrades will lead to people defining the relationship, moving in together, getting real serious. Either way, the important thing to note is that the death and rebirth of Venus taking place in March will coincide probably with a transformation of circumstance relative to love and relationships. So you kind of keep that in mind and track that as it's getting closer to the time. Now, Mercury is going to enter that house, and there's a really kind of important conversation that it looks like is taking place as Mercury meets Venus right over your descendant. This is about March 11th. So I say conversation because Mercury-Venus is often about communication in love and relationships. And here this is hugging your descendant while Venus is retrograde. So this conversation is like a key point within the retrograde to track. That's March 11th. By the way, if you don't remember all this, you can always watch the replay later and like jot down some notes or something. Now, if we take this forward a little bit more, we're going to see that then Mercury stations and turns retrograde. Now, when Mercury is also going through a transformation in the same house, right as Mercury passes Venus, then we know, okay, there's something is really up, right? There's something's taking place here. I suspect with Mercury and Venus that this is about a dialogue, a kind of dialectical that's taking place in a relationship or within your dating life internally. You're kind of coming to different conclusions, something like that. Now, as if this isn't enough, the sun will then enter Aries. Venus will be Cazimi at the heart of the sun around March 22nd, further intensifying the importance of the topic of love and relationships. Mercury will then be Cazimi March 24th, again, intensifying the topic of love and relationships. So you see how potent it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as if this isn't enough, watch what happens just a couple days after Venus finishes her retrograde in Aries and is now officially on the other side of the sun, starting to gradually get that distance and emerges the morning star. We have a solar eclipse in Aries, landing just a couple degrees off from your descendant. Now, solar eclipses represent chapter changes, right? This is a north node out of sign solar eclipse. So you get the feeling that a new chapter is opening. A new seed has been planted, and it's come through the work of March. The retrogrades have led to this new opening. Now, that new opening could be I'm free from someone that I almost got into some drama with, right? Or it could be I'm getting deeper into something with someone that I'm really interested in, but I've had to go through maybe the hard work of opening myself to trust again, a serious relationship that's starting to form. But either way, that month of March is going to be lit. Now, as if that's not enough, if we take this forward just one day later after the solar eclipse, now Neptune, a planet that takes, 15 years at times to travel through one sign, is changing signs and ingressing into your 7th house of love and relationships. It'll be there until October. When Neptune comes into the 7th house, now we're starting to wrestle with the question of how perfect something can be. Now, that's one way of thinking about Neptune's transit. So it's entering my 7th house. How perfect, how ideal can love be? How much disappointment, failure, ineptitude is tolerable? And how much is, how unwilling to compromise should I be? I stick to my ideal. I stick to my dreams. I stick to my standards. I don't settle. So Neptune's always driving that distinction between the dream and the maybe the practical earthly restrictions or realities. Well, by the end of May, Saturn will also enter your 7th house, coming together with Neptune. And now we really get that potential wedge between the ideal and the real. Oh, I've fallen in love with someone. It turns out they don't make money and they have a drinking problem and they didn't tell me, right? That's the harsh reality of Saturn, destroying the dream of Neptune. On the other hand, you could look at it just the opposite and say, no relationship is ideal. I've learned and I've grown. I've gone through 2 marriages earlier in my life. I met someone fantastic. They're not perfect. I'm realizing as things deepen that this is going to be some work, but you know what? That's life. And I can live with this. I can commit to this. I can do hard things, including commitment and relationships with people who aren't perfect, because there's enough good here. There's enough beauty. There's enough depth. There's enough care. There's enough genuineness that I can live with the hard stuff. It could go that way as well. So Neptune and Saturn will be sort of driving a wedge between how much should I tolerate and compromise and how much should I not tolerate and compromise with respect to the ideal that I'm seeking to embody around love, intimacy, sex, relationships. This process is ongoing for the rest of the year with Saturn and Neptune there until September and October. And then they both come back full on and conjoin in 2026. But I would say for you, relationships get totally ignited in the month of March, with kicking off with the Venus and Mercury retrogrades in your 7th house, followed by the solar eclipse, followed by Neptune, right? So March is a very powerful and important month. May is also a big deal. Venus will come back through Aries in May, and then Saturn will enter Aries in late May again as well. So we could have put a broader umbrella around it, maybe March through June, just kind of give it a little broader area. I suspect that it's a very big year for you in relation to, love, romance, intimacy, a lot to learn. And I would say everything you've learned in the past, keep it close to your heart. When you're tested at a new phase in your life with an old topic that you haven't maybe been tested on for a while, because maybe I've been single, I've been protecting myself, I've been learning, I've been wise, I'm not getting into the same old stuff. But then at some point you're like, I'm ready to open myself up. Well, some of those old demons are probably going to come back, And so it's, how do I face them? Am I ready for something new? Or is this a clear message that, maybe I need to hold back a little bit more? Or on the other hand, I'm ready for something new, but I got to do some work around choosing the right person. Sometimes there's like little tests. We have to say no to the wrong person. Then what do you know? Under the same transit, a month later, someone much better walks in. So just know that you're entering a period where everything you've learned is going to be refined and put to the test somehow, I think.
Thank you. I've been doing a lot of work and reflecting, and I've met quite a few people in the last few months that have really tested me, and I have not had them to discourage me. I've just, I figured they're just not for me, and with the other things that I'm doing as far as healing and seeking out reading and books. And so that gives me hope.
Good. Yeah, that's great to hear. I always try to look for, what's going to be useful, and then what's the most realistic way I can deliver the different possibilities that are around this timeline, topic, theme, timeline. What's the hopeful way we can engage with this? And also, like, what should I prepare for? How should I prepare to be tested, to work my own inner process within a time period? So I hope we've been able to give you some good stuff here today. And I really thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. We'll see you again later.
Okay.
Bye, Sherry.
Bye. Bye.
Awesome. We'll do one more for today, and then we will, I'll be finished. I am joining one of my former Nightlight all-star students. Lori Lothian invited me to come on her channel this afternoon to talk about aliens. So I was like, that sounds like fun. And I have a talk coming out next week on more of an explanation as to why the sign of Aquarius is so connected with aliens. A little deeper dive on that I think you guys will find interesting. Okay. Bree. Hey, how's it going? Oh, she came and she left. Let's see if I can. All right, we had her here for a second and then she blanked out. So let me see if I can get her back in. Okay. Well, in the meantime, we'll see. Good question. I don't know when it's due out. I think it might be today. Like, I don't know. I'm going to record with her in a little bit here. And then I believe she's posting it on her channel like today or tomorrow, I think. I don't know. So we'll find out. Okay, Bree, we're going to try you again. Are you there? Oh, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Ah, perfect.
So sorry about that. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, good. Yeah, no worries at all. Like, you came and then you just disappeared.
I know it just closed out for some reason, but here I am.
That's okay. What's your date of birth?
November 25th, 1994.
And the time?
9:39 p.m.
And the location?
Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, here we go. I have you as Leo rising. Does that sound right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, give me just a second here. Yeah, Leo rising. Let me put your chart up on the screen. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I just had a pretty big birthday. I turned 30, and I'm about to graduate grad school in 6 days.
Congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you. And I just feel like there's a lot of transitions happening. I will be starting like a new job. I'm a therapist, a clinical psychologist. And I just kind of want to look at the overall year and see, common themes and things I should look out for and, I don't know, be learning. Yeah, just kind of general, I guess. But
do you have, I'm just going to play on something for just a second here. Are you in a relationship or married?
I'm in a relationship, yes.
And then one other question for you is, do you have sisters or siblings?
Yes, I have a sister, and hopefully she's watching right now.
Okay.
She also likes astrology.
Okay, cool. One thing I'm gonna put up a buy wheel. I ask because really your biggest transit of the year from my point of view is probably Pluto's square to your Venus. Let me just show you that, and we'll unpack some of those possibilities, and I'll try to say a few things about your career as well. But sometimes I just look and I go, ooh, look at that. That seems to steal the show. So I'm going to advance this just a little bit. And the reason I say sisters, let me just point this out first. Okay, here's Pluto in your 7th house, squaring Venus by late February. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason that I think this is important is that when you have a synchronization of themes through different symbols, usually that's a sign that the most obvious topic is the one to pay attention to. So here we have the 7th house of love and relationships. Pluto is entering, ingressing. It's a big deal. So starting to really create that process of change and transformation in the house of love and relationships that will be ongoing for 20 years. This typically starts to happen when people are, like, let's say earlier in life, when you're starting to move toward marriage, or you're starting to move in upcoming years toward marriage and family, something like that. Sometimes in life, it is that critical transformation of our life path that happens when we go through a really difficult breakup. But it really kind of depends on where you are. Like if you're in a healthy, happy relationship and you see things moving toward marriage and family, then probably that's the path that's coming with this Pluto transit. But Pluto squaring that Venus is important because Venus is here in the house of home, family, living environment. So Pluto square Venus, now we're doubling the topic of love and relationships potentially. So when Pluto squares Venus, no matter where they are in the chart, it's very common to see major life events in relation to love, sex, relationships, intimacy, romance. But then when you double it up with the 7th, now we're really kind of cooking with fire around the topic of love and relationships. So I would imagine that February is a big part of the year for the topic of your relationship. If we take this forward a little bit, we're going to see that Pluto will come back through its retrograde to square Venus again. This is by late July. And then Pluto through direct motion will come back to square Venus one more time. And this is going to be, here we go. It's by the very end of December next year, 2025, into January. So about a full year from right now of 3 major passes from Pluto to Venus. Do you feel like you guys are on the edge of getting married or moving in together, or maybe a big shift, moving somewhere or something like that?
Yeah, we're actually long distance. He's in California, so he's planning on moving here, hopefully December, January, February.
Of this coming up?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, there we go. So February, we can see, now Venus is in the 4th house, which is the place of home, family, living environment. So that's why I said, are you guys going to move in together or get married or something? Because the Pluto transit to the 7th, hitting Venus in the 4th, suggests something like that. Now, the other thing that I would plan for is that, Venus and Scorpio can be a little bit spicy. You have a Virgo moon opposite Saturn. I imagine that you're particular about things.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm projecting, but like I can just imagine with the Virgo moon opposite Saturn in Pisces that an establishment of what is mine, what is ours, and shared living space for Venus and Scorpio in the 4th could be a little dramatic. Like that might take a little bit of adjusting. And Pluto square to Venus could make that process a healing and transformative one. There may be parts of yourself that are very much in love with this partner of yours who also have to adapt and change on some level to accommodate sharing a living space with someone. And that could be an opportunity for healing. And maybe there's some connection to some of the control over the environment that you need, or the shared space that you need to grow into, that also has its roots in what space and shared space was like in your home and family growing up. Sometimes the 4th house Venus will tap into, the model of love, relationship, living together, space, and managing of space and time that was demonstrated through mom and dad's marriage, very Venus in the 4th. So there might be an opportunity here for some level of ancestral, familial healing, especially if you come from very different families, different backgrounds, different culture, different religion, different socioeconomic groups, different backgrounds that we have as couples when we move in together that have to negotiate with one another, that it doesn't seem like you would have to negotiate with because they don't come up until you're living together somehow. So I would look for those kinds of things to be a big deal throughout the year. Also for the intensification and deepening of that bond. Pluto Venus is great for deepening love connections and healing through our love and relationships, as long as the relationship is steady, honest, loving, supportive, then I think this transit can be a really healing one that brings a lot of rich transformation and maybe setting the path for marriage. Now, keep in mind that any of those passes can also bring up drama that if it needs to be seen and understood, and because the relationship isn't going to work, that it'll be good to know that too. I don't get that feeling from you, because usually when I'm talking to my clients, and I mean, we're not really client, but when we're talking, usually people will present with like, where I'm with someone, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. I don't know if it will or not. But usually when people are like, I'm in a relationship, we're moving in together, I'm happy, I'm finishing graduate school, it's like, okay, that feels a little bit more stable to me. So I will lean toward a slightly more positive, kind of hopeful interpretation. But just keep that in mind. Now, the other thing that is important here is that Venus is the natural planet associated with sisters. Venus is also the ruler of your third house of siblings. And so when I look at that, I go, this year could be really big with respect to your relationship with your sister, with whatever she's going through, with whatever life events she's going through that kind of have some interesting karmic parallel to your own. So for example, could this be a year in which both of your relationships are going through big changes? Could this be a year in which she's getting married or having a baby or moving, or you're getting closer, or there's something that's a little bit of a tense spot between the two of you, or something like that, possibility. But whatever it is, that Venus is potentially tapping into things like sisters, siblings, and also anything with respect to family of origin, ancestral karma, the fourth house topics of home and family. So I wonder how there's an intersection between marriage and family or ancestral backgrounds, and also maybe some connection to your sister and your relationship with her and whatever's going on in her life and how it kind of intersects with your own.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I can't wait to hear what she has to say.
Yeah.
She lives in Peru. So it's not like we're physically close in location, but yeah, that's fascinating. And I think that even what you said about that family portion, I'm currently living at home with my mom, so he would actually be moving in. We would all be living together for a part of time. So
isn't that interesting? There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm glad we could help. Just remember that with Pluto transits, anything that has to be dealt with that's kind of like, ugh, like, I don't want to look at this, or this is unconscious stuff, or this is ancestral stuff, or this is feels deeper than it should be. Because sometimes stuff will come up and you'll be like, this isn't a big deal on paper. Why does it feel like a big deal? And that's sometimes old traumas, old soul history stuff that we can't necessarily see. But if anything invites deeper exploration and, being able to get into spaces that are not as easily managed or contained emotionally, be open to that. Because again, when you have a moon in Virgo opposite Saturn in Pisces, sometimes there's a reluctance to get into anything that can feel overwhelming emotionally. It's like I would like to, you know what? That is one of the main reasons that people with Moon Saturn dynamics are very good at holding space for other people who are going through emotional trauma, suffering. You can hold space because you're a therapist. You have the capacity to set boundaries and create a nice, safe container. Pluto does not. One of the the myths of Pluto is dragging young people down into the underworld, right? There's a sense of boundaries being violated with Pluto. And the best versions of those are initiations into adulthood that don't harm, that don't traumatize, but that educate and enlighten us. I think with Pluto, in order to not have a traumatic experience, we have to know, oh, this is Hades, this is Pluto. There's a level at which some of this is difficult, and I'm going to need some time to heal and process some of what happens around a Pluto transit. But I'm also, if I remain open to it, this is an initiation, a descent and return that is really going to enrich my life if I trust that process. Just like a therapist would, in a sense, be giving people tools to trust the process of their inner life. You have to trust that that's part of what Pluto is trying to give us, is more capacity to go into deep, difficult spaces and come out with riches.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely feel like very seen. Pretty much describe me to a T. Hard for me to always, yeah, go into deeper places, but I often feel, like you mentioned, I can hold space for others. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. And I hopefully won't be as scared.
Yeah. And good luck with do you have a little bit left in graduate school? You're almost done, or you just finished, or?
I'm finished in 6 days. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's a
you.
fantastic accomplishment.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And best of luck with everything. Stay in touch. Let us know. Drop a comment in the channel sometime. Tell us how it's going, or send me an Instagram message and give me an update. I always invite people to do that for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I definitely will.
Okay, cool. Well, you take it easy, Bree.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. Okay. Sorry, Nikki, I'm not going to be able to get to you because I have to move on and get to this recording that I have to do. So I apologize. We ran out of time, but come back next time, Nikki, and I'll be sure to put you at the top of the list. I'm probably do one next week. Just remind me, put in the comment of your post in the inbox, put Nikki who didn't get on last week or something, so I'll spot you. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. I hope that these readings are instructive. If you're out there learning how to read charts, I think it helps see how a practitioner does things, kind of see the choices I make, how I choose to talk about things, how I organize things. All of that, if we watch it, we can kind of entrain ourselves to. It's a big part of why in all of my programs, I make sure that there's a solid part of every program that includes live readings, where you get to see me at work with someone for an hour, and then we break down the craft and discussion afterward. Theory, technique, history, philosophy without hands-on application it just doesn't work. So all of my programs, you'll find that if you come study with us, you'll get not only a really nice, deep overview of all of the Hellenistic foundations and the timing techniques, the predictive techniques, everything, but we also put a lot of care into the archetypal and psychological dimensions of counseling. And we also put a lot of time into live client work and practice. So come study with us through the Kickstarter. The classes are on sale. Let me tell you one last time how you can participate in the Kickstarter. Let me just flash the link up here one more time. We need about 53 backers today to try and catch up with our pace. So let's see if we can get some more support for the channel today. If you enjoy this channel, if you watch it regularly, if you take something from it, if it plays a positive role in your life, then please consider supporting us and everything that we do and all the content that we create and this whole staff that is behind everything that we try to help other people with in astrology. So you can find the link there in the comments section, in the description of the video, on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Thank you for helping us reach our goals. And there will be a scheduled live stream next week as well. And as soon as the details are up, you can go to the live tab on the YouTube channel and you'll see the next scheduled live stream for next week posted. I also posted on my Instagram and in my newsletter. You can sign up for that on the website if you want. So, all right. Have a great day, everybody. And thanks for tuning in.